they got spanked.
Yeah.
Straight up. And I'm glad that you mentioned the penalty kick from the first leg, because that was a major talking point in this tie. We were so upset because of that penalty kick. Because honestly, it was ridiculous. But ultimately, over 2 legs, that wasn't the difference maker between these two teams.
Atalanta as well didn't get the job done against Club Brugge. We've had a viewer question in from Rhythm451. Considering Champions League form, which result was more shocking, AC Milan or Atalanta, Mike?
I think the Atalanta one was actually more shocking, because the Milan one, you could say, okay, fine, they score 1 goal in 180 minutes of football, but the red card happened, so then it kind of skews all the analysis that you can make on it. But for me, Atalanta didn't lose anything. Yeah, they lost the penalty, very unlucky. I thought it was not a penalty in the first leg, but then all they have to do, not easy, because Club Brugge, you have to respect them, but they have to win a game of football at home, which they're very good at doing. And they get hit on the counter, they get caught with the backs high again, and another counter, and Club Brugge had too much quality for them. So I didn't see Atalanta conceding 3 goals at home. I think that, to me, was the more surprising result.
They got spanked.
Yeah.
Straight up. And I'm glad that you mentioned the penalty kick from the first leg, because that was a major talking point in this tie. We were so upset because of that penalty kick. Because honestly, it was ridiculous. But ultimately, over 2 legs, that wasn't the difference maker between these two teams. Club Brugge were by far the more deserving team. I mean, to go to Italy...
I don't know about that. No,
you beat them 3-0 in Italy in 45 minutes, and they're not deserving? They didn't prove to be the better team over 2 legs?
For me, the penalty does dictate the way Atalanta wants to play from the opening minute at home.
But then it's different if they come 3 goals?
It's different if they go there with a draw and they can manage the game better, but they're down a goal, they have to go for the goal. The conceding was the surprise for me, but also they missed the penalty and they created stupid amount of chances.
Penalty, that's on you.
They hit the post twice. They scored a goal that was offside. It's not like you can say that they got spanked bad. I thought the conceding was strange to me, the way that they were conceding goals.
Weirdly as well, I thought the sense of injustice, what happened at the end of the first leg, would actually spur on Atalanta to kind of prove everyone wrong.
That's why it surprised me.
And for me, I thought that we were going to see Atalanta come out here wanting to prove everybody wrong. The injustice from the first leg was going to carry them through this game, but we didn't see that at all.
No, I think I agree with Nico in that the surprise was the way that they conceded to Club Brugge, because they knew that they would hit on the counter, and the way that they were left open for the first 2 goals was unacceptable at this level. You know, I think they thought that they were going to bully Club Brugge and push them around at home and go in and put them under high pressure, what they've done to some big teams, and Club Brugge were very comfortable, and they went the other way and scored some fantastic goals.
Look at the chance before the 3-0 where you hit the crossbar where Mignolet makes the save. Like, that's also on Atalanta. Like, you did create a lot of opportunities, but you also missed those opportunities. Yeah. And then at the other end, you could see it 3 times. It's the first time in European history that a Belgian team goes to Italy and scores 3 goals. Yeah. Has never happened before.
That was the surprise.
The other way. I thought the Milan one was more surprising. Mike, you and I stood right around here watching this big wall when that Club Brugge side was ripping apart Manchester City.
In the first half.
In the first half of that game. Team. Yeah, and we looked at it, we're like, you can't sleep on this team. And I said on Morning Footy last week, I said, this is the one tie I wouldn't place a bet on. I'm not a betting man to begin with, but this isn't where I would start right here with this one, because I think we underestimated Brugge maybe a little bit, and they got the job done. So for me, Milan was more surprising. I thought Milan would go through. I thought Atalanta would struggle today. Maybe not as much as they did struggle, but I thought they would struggle.
Club Brugge didn't score many goals. I think they scored one of the teams that scored the least amount of goals in the group stage. So it was not that they were like a dangerous team on the attacking thing, but you know what they are? They're a really smart team. When you talk about IQ, like every single player is technically, tactically sound, and they're really composed on the ball. And so if Atalanta were going to expose themselves in that way, which they usually do, Club Brugge are smart enough and composed enough to say, okay, boom, there's the spaces, boom, boom. Then they had the technical quality to finish those chances, because I think they've scored 4 or 5 goals the entire group stage through 8 matches. Scored 3 again, today against Atalanta. So I think it was more that the surprise that Atalanta gave them those spaces in a game of this magnitude.
Van Aken's class, isn't he? What a player. Speaking of penalty incidents, we obviously had one in the first leg. We had one as well in this game concerning Ademola Lookman, and this is what Gianpiero Gasperini, his manager, said afterwards. He shouldn't have taken the penalty. He's one of the worst penalty takers I've ever seen. The penalty takers were De Ketelaere and Retegui, but apparently he, and he's talking about Lookman here, was euphoric after scoring, and then there was this penalty. Someone else could have still missed it, but it wasn't a nice gesture. Tony, I mean, we see it all the time when a player runs forward, grabs the ball, wants to take the penalty because they feel like they're playing well. I would have thought, though, a manager like Gasperini, who we know is kind of a stickler for sticking to the rules throughout his squad. He doesn't suffer fools at all. I'm surprised this incident happened.
Yeah, I am, and you're right. We do see this oftentimes, right? We saw it with Christian Pulisic, right? We had an incident at Milan at the beginning of the year, and we made a big deal about it. And then Fonseca fixed it and said, this is the guy. Look, I've been in dressing rooms. I left that dressing room every time knowing this was the order of penalty kick takers. Adam is first. If Adam is not on the field,
I wouldn't have been first.
Grella is next. You were third. Nico's next. If the two of you aren't on the field, like it's pretty simple. Now there is that circumstance at the end of a game when a guy's got 2 goals and you want to get him a hat trick and you put him up at the penalty. That's a completely different situation. This is a knockout game here, right? So I am very surprised by this.
So let me ask you a question. You too, Nico. What did you think though of the comments that Gasperini had? Because
I'm a little bit surprised.
You could say I agree with what you're saying, but also then you could just handle that behind closed doors or whatever, or maybe you could just let sleeping dogs lie and say, okay, fine, just don't do it again and we're done. But to go out into the press conference and say that and now make it public, for me,
but not only
smart.
that, he was extremist about it. He said
extreme.
one of the worst penalty kick takers I've ever seen. Yes, he had a really bad penalty kick once when for Fulham or against Everton against Fulham where he chipped. It was a horrendous Panenka. Like, sure, but this is a guy that scored a hat trick in a Europa League final for you. He's beloved at the club, African Player of the Year. You're eliminated. It feels like you're projecting a little bit something else if you hang him out to dry. The guy, he's the one that got you guys back into the game. I don't know. It seemed a little bit extreme.
And I will say, a lot of the question people say, well, why is Atalanta not always an automatic top 4 team? Why do they not always compete in Europe? Gasperini's the best. His net spend over his time there, whatever it is, 10, 11 years, is positive. What he's done, the way he's developed players, he is the club in a lot of respects, and he gets a lot of the credit. But if you want to look at his weak side is going after big-name players in his team. He's always had difficulty managing the big personalities and the big characteristics. It's like his way or the highway. And to come for me after Lookman and say those things, for me, I think it's unnecessary. Maybe he was frustrated. Obviously, we don't know the context exactly of how it was said. But I think it's just very unnecessary to go after your best player. He is your best player in the team, no question about it. To go after your best player over a big loss like that, when really that's probably not the story anyway. So a little awkward for me, a little unnecessary.